Since the early 1980s, women have broken down old gender barriers, presided over colleges and companies, ridden space shuttles, run for vice president and president, and their success has relegated gender stereotypes to the dustbin, right? Wrong. That's according to a study of gender stereotypes from 1983 to 2014, published in the journal Psychology of Women Quarterly. It's titled, "The Times They Are A-Changin', or Are They Not?" I asked lead author, Paterson University professor Elizabeth Haines, what gender stereotyping is and how it can be measured.
Gender stereotypes are overgeneralizations about the beliefs about men and women, and we tend to look at them, we tend to measure them by looking at the differences between how people perceive men versus women on different categories. So in the study that we're reporting on, we looked at traits like as being nice or being kind. Those are typically associated with being female in our society, being aggressive and independent and agentic, and those are associated with being men. But also the interesting thing about this study is that we looked at role behaviors like tending the house and breadwinning, as well as occupations and then physical traits as well.
How do gender stereotypes in your research impede women's growth in the ranks of their companies?
Well, gender stereotypes, they can, two ways. They can actually be self-limiting behavior. If you believe that only women can be nurturing and communal and only men can be agentic, powerful leaders, that's going to limit your own behavior in important kinds of ways.
So it's a self-selection.
That's, yeah, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So maybe women are less likely to lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg says, when they need to maybe be promoted. But more importantly, it's how other people view you. If other people view you in terms of old stereotypes that only women can be taking care of the house and taking care of children, then that's going to be a problem if you're being considered for a leadership position.
Where do you find the most significant differences in gender stereotypes?
The most significant differences in gender stereotypes tend to be on occupations and physical traits, although they exist everywhere. And that was one of the surprising things about this study. They were as strong today as they were in 1993 on all dimensions. On trait behaviors, like being communal and being warm and kind, that the typical man is seen as way lower on those dimensions than the typical woman. But also on role behaviors such as tending the house, does laundry, gets emotional, all those kinds of things.
But also the same behavior would be viewed as strength in a man and witchy in a woman?
Yeah, we do find that when women engage in stereotypical things associated with being male in our society, tough, assertive, independent, that those things receive a little bit of backlash from other people in terms of the emotions that they engender.
How do you explain how gender stereotypes remain fixed this many years after the doors were kicked in virtually in 1971?
Yeah, so we think that there's some really important psychological processes. One thing that we know is that when people have beliefs, especially about a group, again, stereotypes are beliefs, overgeneralizations about any particular group member, that once you believe that to be true, you tend to look for information that confirms that initial belief. And we don't look for information that disconfirms the belief. So when we think about what are women like, well, let me think, who comes to mind first? Oh, my mom, my sisters, and so forth. They're really emotional and kind of nice and not too independent. And then you don't tend to look, well, what are some of the counterexamples? And what is the spread or what is the diversity within women? And so once you believe a belief to be true, that you don't look for the disconfirming evidence. Yeah, and another important thing is that people tend to, when they come in contact with someone who is atypical for their gender, they tend to dismiss them as being, oh, well, that doesn't represent the entire category. They're very different.
How are you going to apply this research?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. I'm really interested to see how understanding how people incorporate the stereotypes as part of their self-concept, how that affects what they choose in life. You know, are they less likely to go for leadership positions if they're women if they really endorse gender stereotypes when they're completely capable of doing these things? My concerns are also with men in a lot of ways is that men, we know that women have changed a lot, in the last 30 years. Men have changed very little, and I'm really interested to see how gender stereotypes are limiting men's participation in caregiving for their children and doing those kinds of activities.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you.